Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. How are we?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Pretty excited. Always good to be ready for Friday, and May is a good month to be in. So,
yes. So here we are. For everyone that's joining and listening in, this will also be our last Experience Friday Live, Michael.
Wow.
How do we make it more confusing, but to have a guest on with us named Michael?
Even better.
Okay. It's going to be a fun one today. So, hey, brother, 2.5 years we've been doing this. Why did we start doing this show? Let's let our listeners know that, and we'll dive right in today.
Yeah, because bottom line is that experiences matter, and the more we can talk about it, the better we can create a world with better experiences, right? I love, after all of this, understanding that we are creating experiences every day, all the time. All companies are creating experiences, and that's non-negotiable. That's what happens, right? The question is, can you create good experiences that help your business along in whatever way? Or are you creating bad experiences, negative experiences that just distract you from making the success that you want to make? So that happens with personal brands. That happens with organizations of all sizes, consultants who are working alone to major corporations with hundreds of thousands of employees. That we are creating experiences. But the question is, what kind of experiences you want, good or bad, and how do you want to leverage those experiences to being able to have a more successful venture?
Yeah, awesome. And it has been amazing to do this with you, Michael. And some of you may have been watching the pre-video and saw a new banner coming up. So in June, we'll be launching another type of show, but not just focused on experience. And this one I'll be doing, and then Michael will be coming on as a guest throughout time again to guest host. So, but let's talk about our guest today. His name is Michael Kainatsky, and his success was never a foregone conclusion. In fact, it was literally the exact opposite. Problems have always found him, either his own or others. I love this. And in 2017, he left a C-suite role and had absolutely no clue as to what he was going to do with himself. Miraculously and completely by accident, a massive problem met him head on that changed the course of his entire life. What was it? The absurdly broken hiring system that exists in America. And Michael Harper, you and I have seen that. But let's welcome Mr. Kainatsky to the stage with us today. In Starbucks with his own music behind him. He brings his own music to everything.
It's impressive.
Yeah, I like no other guest has done that for us, Michael. So what a way to end, right? Uh, so,
Yes.
welcome. I guess I'm going to call you Kainatsky and we'll call him Harper. That's the only way I'll not be confused here today. So, Mr. Kainatsky, we start this and have always started this with the same question, and we're going to end this show with the same question. Why do you do what you do, and what keeps you motivated as you do it?
Well, why I do it is probably the same reason why I'm motivated to do it is because it's something that I don't think that I could ever actually solve. It's what my good friend Keith Billis calls an audacious problem. So I figure it's something that I will keep doing because it'll never fix itself. Because the truth of the matter is, like you guys were talking in the beginning, uh, companies, the bigger they are, the harder it is to change these things. Revenue hides a multitude of sins. I don't see this problem going away. I don't see myself being able to fix the problem. But I figure if we get more people involved and actually talking about it and shining a spotlight on how bad it actually is, I have a feeling that companies are going to start having a rude awakening and realizing that some of the things that they're doing are premeditated and self-inflicted, and that I think is going to be the true renaissance where I believe people are going to start looking at this problem in a different light.
I love it. I love it. And there are so many past avenues that we could go down, correct, today, and so many statistics that you gave us. But I want to start with this quote, and Harper's going to join in here and start discussing this with us. But I love this quote that you sent us. You know, making a product is hard, but making a team that can continually make products is even harder. The product I'm most proud of is Apple, and the team I built at Apple. Steve Jobs. Why did you give us that particular quote to start this off with today?
Because this is the quote by which everything that I do today, everything that I believe in, everything that's probably drawn me down this path, that is the one single most valuable quote that and Steve Jobs, this is something that he essentially said months before he passed away. It was when Walter Isaacson was writing the book about him. He said to him, "What are you most proud of?" And you would think a person that created the greatest product and company and just pretty much all around ecosystem that everybody lives and breathes by today would think, "Oh man, I'm proud of this thing." And he said the most important thing for him was just hiring and keeping the right people that made this generational, maybe not even generational, maybe once in a ever organization. And it was all came down to the one factor, which is building the team that did it. I mean, how can you possibly speak about anything more valuable than that?
Yeah, I love it. Michael Harper, what's your thoughts?
I mean, there's just so much that happens here, right? And if you tie it back to spirit experience, you're talking about multiple levels of experience. You're talking about just in the hiring process, that is when the employee experience begins, right? And then there's important employee experience after that as well. But these people that you're bringing in to be your team members, if they have a poor experience in the hiring process, and when we've worked with companies, especially in the world of onboarding, it is crazy the typos in offer letters and the email trains that we see about people who are trying to get information and can't get information, or they get hired on day one even, and they're asking questions about insurance and about their livelihood, and they're getting no support. They're not getting their questions answered. So when you say that you stumbled into a problem, I mean, I can't imagine the immensity of that problem that you've seen, and the importance of experience through all of it. So how does experience layer into the nuts and bolts of this hiring problem that you're on fire about?
Well, you guys are really big on customer experience. I like to reverse engineer problems, and you work backwards and you think about what is it the thing that leads to a bad customer experience, right? That's kind of the ultimate end game, how our customers are treated. And you heard people say it, if you treat your employees right, you'll treat your customers right. So you don't really have to worry about the customer, worry about the employee. And it's really confusing to me as to how many companies that I've at least interacted with that this is not the most important thing. And you have to imagine that the hiring experience, right, the HX, which is the beginning, this is the first interaction, kind of like I like to use different terms. People say, listen, if you invite someone to dinner to your house, you want it to be clean, you want the house to be nice, you want to open the door and be like, hey, how are you? Imagine you invited somebody to dinner and then somebody opens the door and they go, who the hell are you? I'm here for the dinner party. Are they expecting you? Like, you imagine how you'd feel. And you'd be surprised that this happens with interviews and even first days of employment. So often where candidates call me and go, I just showed up here and I'm sitting in the lobby for 20 minutes. I said I'm here for my first day. No one has any clue I'm starting or who I am. I'm just sitting here, dude. And I'm like, oh my God, this person just quit a job because look, I don't find people jobs. I take great people and give them better opportunities, or so I believe it's going to be. So when somebody says, look, I just left a great opportunity. Everything seemed to be good. And now no one knows I'm here. That is the beginning of what I would probably say is the turnover cycle. At that point, they're like, this is not a long-term game for me because these people have no care whatsoever that today's my first day of work and I'm joining a family. I changed my life to come.
Yeah.
That's kind of the joke I have with candidates. It's like there's few things that people have that are big life changes: buying a home, getting married, birth of a child, and making a massive decision to leave one company or another. That's a pretty big decision for companies. And unfortunately, it seems to me that companies, when the candidate makes a decision on this for a company, they're like, thank you so much for choosing us. They don't really take that as seriously as they should. And the reason for that is because the people responsible for onboarding tend to be the same people who are responsible for hiring. And they're not skilled in either of those things, which is why I always believe that, HR, I love them, they're great. But if you ask HR, what do they do? Most of them will tell you, I wear many hats. They'll never tell you what their job is. They'll tell you the many jobs that they're supposed to do, but how many of them can they really do exceptionally well? Well, candidates, those people entering your workforce, they're actually just as important as your customers. Customers are people that pay you. Candidates are people that get you paid. You have to treat them both equally. And that's why I always believe, and am really pushing on this process now, where I believe the onboarding process, the hiring process, the recruiting process has to function like a sales organization in and of itself, because it's no different customers or candidates. It's the same ecosystem, and they should be treated exactly the same way.
So go ahead, Michael.
Well, I think that having that sales metaphor is so helpful, because our experience as we've journey mapped with companies on the hiring process and onboarding process, that it often feels like as soon as a sale is closed, that it's no longer valuable to be thinking about humanizing that person, instead of just thinking they're another number in your system, or what they're whining and dining you, metaphorically, like trying to lure you in to take the job, and then as soon as you do, it's like, okay, I closed that deal, I'm moving on to my next deal, and the person can go fend for themselves. So I love that you're talking about a holistic approach to the experience with all of that. Do you have like a secret sauce for like one or two, like always have to do it like this if you want to have success?
Before you answer that, Mr. Kainatsky, I want to read this statistic because I think this will help what he's going to talk about, because this one blew me away. Lost productivity cost U.S. businesses $1.8 trillion every year, while turnover costs U.S. businesses an estimated $1 trillion annually.
But it seems to be an acceptable loss. Like it doesn't seem like companies care enough about that lost money, because one company's not losing 1 trillion. It's spread out just a little bit amount, and it's just an accepted loss on the P&L.
How many employees are there, do you think, in the United States officially on the books right now?
Woof.
150 million?
Yeah.
right? Because you figure retirees and kids, so half
Right.
maybe.
Yeah.
I don't have a calculator, but we're talking. This number here kind of talks about, give or take. Let's just round it off and say it's 2 trillion, right? Some of those costs cross over because
Yep.
productivity cost and turnover costs have to. Not always is productivity and turnover the same, because people may be collecting a paycheck and not leaving, and you may not be firing, which means that's not a corollary between the two. So let's say it's $2 trillion. What's 2 trillion divided by 150 million? What's that number? If you were to run it, I can
Yeah.
take that calculator real quick. Somebody could do it too. But is it an acceptable loss per person? The answer to that is no. Here's what it is. It is unknowable loss. I have actually interviewed CFOs, very smart people, CEOs, venture capitalists, private equity people. I asked the same question. Do you know how to calculate turnover cost? Do you know what it actually is? Does it matter to you? Here's the answer. Usually it's we don't really know how to calculate it. We use an industry standard for what we think is acceptable for turnover, which means they're, like you said, Michael, it's an acceptable loss. It's the cost of doing business. But
Yep.
if you ask any sales organization or customer success that is an offshoot of sales and say, what do you consider an acceptable loss every year in customer churn that is completely avoidable? Tell me what your acceptable loss is. Do you think that number, the way they think it's acceptable for customers that do business with them, do you think that number is any number greater than 0?
Right.
I would guess any sales organization will say, we understand we're probably going to lose customers, but we don't think it's acceptable.
Yeah.
Which is why sales organizations get so much money pumped into them to constantly bring more business in, and customer success people in organizations where they understand we need to make sure the customer continues to see value and that the relationship is nurtured. That's a lot of money spent on that. So you would think. Go ahead.
Well, no, and you saw I put the number up there, $14,000 a person, right? So I want to even dig into another, because I think this, when I was reading some of this information preparing for this, like, I knew it, but I hadn't read it in a long time, so I had forgot it, right? That replacing an employee can cost up to 2 times their annual salary. And replacing C-level positions can cost up to 213% of their yearly salary.
So I can tell you these numbers are fake. They are so undervalued that it is a joke. A C-level position costs, I believe, between 5 and 10 times that person's salary. I interviewed a president of a company. We had a call a couple of months ago. We were talking about it, and he said, I'm not really happy here. I don't want to be here anymore. I'm kind of over it. And I just came on. They wanted me to join. They wanted me to take the role. I really am not happy. He's at the point of his life. He's like, I just don't want to do this anymore. It's not worth the money. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. If you were to leave at 6 months now, you're 6 months in, you're in front of a lot of customers, you have a lot of value, a lot of knowledge, that would technically be considered a bad hire, wouldn't it? He'd say, absolutely, because I was not engaged. I don't want to be here. I'm like, what would that cost the company? And he goes, millions, because they're going to say, why did the CEO leave? Whenever a C-level executive leaves, nobody says, hey, we got another one. No, you go, whoa. What the hell happened? What's going on there? Now, if it's not a public company, you may not know, but let's assume it's a public company. And they go, the shareholders go, wait a minute, guys, whoa. There's something wrong here. CEOs, CROs, CFOs don't just leave. That means there's a problem. So I don't agree with 213%. I think that if that was the number, let's be honest, guys. You know why that number is stupid? When a CEO leaves, how much money do they get as their buyout? Is that 213% of their salary, you think? Or is it like 50 times? The guy from Boeing, what did he get? Was that 200% of his salary for all the mistakes he did, and then he got another $60 million just to walk away after a massive failure?
Well, it's
Look,
funny.
it's college coaches.
Well, that's what Michael, I was just getting ready to say, Harper. Harper and I have this discussion all the time. I want to go be a college coach and fail miserably and lose and get 3 years worth of my salary to sit on my ass at home.
which is millions of dollars to do nothing.
They make $4 to $6 million, $4 to $8 million a year.
Yeah.
Assuming, and here's another thing: they get 3 years severance. What did they get another job? They still get the severance. Like, think about what we're talking about. I mean, this is just, we can, like, if you untangle the craziness of what I'm talking about, because I talk about stupidity. This is crazy and stupid now, because we're just talking about, like, we have this, I feel like, a culture of acceptable mediocrity that is swept under the rug, and everybody just keeps going because there's no incentive for anyone to change this. Who's incentivized in any company to fix a problem? And more importantly, who's penalized for perpetuating? Answer that question for me.
Yeah.
So what about solutions?
Well, here, that's this question. Why do you believe HR should be removed from hiring?
So look, I want to preface this by saying I do not dislike HR. This is actually the opposite. I'm actually saying this because I like HR, and I feel bad for HR for all of the things put on their shoulders that they are not qualified to do. Nobody would be upset if I said, your chief revenue officer should not be legal counsel. No one would get mad at me if I said this, right? It's pretty obvious. Well, what do? Well, they're running a sales organization. They're not a legal expert. Okay, would anybody be mad at me for saying that the CEO should not be the CFO if he's not qualified? No, he knows nothing about finance. He knows nothing about tax and audit. But when you bring in HR and you say to them, hey, they're basically they're literally going to take on multiple roles. And then you look at, and by the way, here's something interesting fact. CEOs and C-suite, they believe that recruiting and hiring is a cost center for the company. They don't think that it's a value add and a revenue generator for the company. And because of that, they say, well, since it's a cost center, let's put our cheapest people there so we can mitigate those costs. And let's make it as cheap and as efficient and fast in hiring so we keep the costs down. No one thinks about the cost of ownership at all. No one thinks about that. So that is where I believe the first problem is. It's HR and what it is they can and cannot do. So I think HR should be removed because their job is to protect the company from existing employees who are already there with any issues that can come up. They have nothing to do with a new person coming in, no more than you would tell HR, guys, we need you to get on the sales side and start prospecting. You would never ask them to do that, but isn't hiring exactly the same thing? And yet we ask them to get involved in it every day, and they're the ones that are creating these turnover problems because they're just checking boxes for the open recs. By the time they get someone in play, the people who are the hiring managers, they're so desperate for candidates that it's been so long, they'll take anyone, the best of whoever, and they'll just pick the best person they can. And that's where this problem starts perpetuating and goes off to the oblivion, or where you see disengagement, turnover costs, and that's just a company problem. I can show you this problem, how this conversation went on for hours. I can show you how it's broken on the candidate side. Again, perpetuated by this hiring system where candidates are now responding and reacting differently, even if it doesn't work for them, because they don't know what to do with themselves. Because again, the hiring ecosystem is damaged beyond belief and needs not to be fixed. It needs to be taken out in the back, shot, and it has to have I guess you can call it a born-again Christian moment.
Okay, Harper, I know you got response to that. And by the way, Kainatsky, Brad says, I like you too, Mike. So.
By the way, I will say that every single HR person who's now a consultant who no longer works in corporate, everyone I've ever talked to has agreed with me 100% and said, you're absolutely right. We have nothing to do with hiring. We hate it. And I want nothing to do with it when my clients want me to get involved with it. So they don't want to do it once they're not at a company, but they try to do it and want to own it, almost maybe like to make themselves indispensable to the organization. Like you can never fire HR. They wear too many hats. Maybe that's what it's built on. But I'm telling you, I've talked to many HR people that have all agreed that this is broken and they can't fix it when they're in HR, so they leave it and then start consulting externally because that's the only way they can ever get through to anybody.
So bringing it, because we do have to look at our time, we could talk all day, right? So what advice do you have for people who are kind of stuck in the muck? So HR teams who agree with you, but they don't know what to do, or people who are, hiring managers who want to do better, but just don't have the means. What's your advice to them?
Look, the number one thing, my advice is go to the C-suite, show them the statistics that are there. I didn't make these statistics up. These statistics are real. Show them the statistics. This is the mistakes we're making. These hiring mistakes are not just, oh, we paid salary, we paid training, we paid benefits. These are mistakes that resonate throughout your entire company. You hire the wrong people, culture is broken. You cannot fix culture in a company. You can only hire for culture, and the culture is developed. Once you hire, if you have a bunch of wrong pieces, you can't build an engine. You can't just magically come in and say, oh, I'm just going to MacGyver everything together. That looks great in shows, but you can't. Nothing will work well together. So companies need to go to their CFOs and their CEOs and say, this is a problem. We cannot fix it. We're just perpetuating it. Our turnover costs, our turnover percentages are continuing to be high. We don't need to run by what the industry is. We need to run by what we want to be. It doesn't matter if everyone around you is a smoker that smokes 15 cigarettes a day and you're only smoking 10. That doesn't mean you're better off. It just means that you're not quite as bad. But why doesn't everybody reverse it and say, let's see how we can be best in class, not better than the worst in class? So that's the number one. It's admitting that there's a problem. It's acknowledging it. Bring people in like me to show you how to calculate it. I want to talk to people about this all day, every day. I want to help people. The problem is you need people that understand hiring, but also understand sales. And if they understand those two components, they'll understand that hiring is a sales function. So you should remove HR, create a chief talent officer whose job is nothing but managing a team of salespeople who are also just basically recruiters who are going out and getting your best people, proactive sourcing, managing the pipeline, making sure they're taken care of through the pipeline, making sure they're managed through their candidate life cycle, and making sure that the handoff and that employee experience that they have is so good that they stay long, they have great results, and then the recruiter that brought them in should also share in those results and get paid a percentage for their retention and their performance, which then means the whole organization is tied into retention and performance and growth, not just checking a box and saying it's no longer my problem.
Which is what happens, right? It's no longer my problem.
It's not my problem. I checked my box. My job is to get 10 candidates. I did it. I don't care if they're qualified or not. I got you 10 people. You hired them. It's not my problem. Everyone is it's just one, you have a bunch of dominoes, and one domino knocks over the next domino, knocks over the next domino. And as you know, a domino this big will knock over a domino the size of the Empire State Building if you put 10 dominoes in front of it. This is a problem that will fix itself the same way. A small little domino will knock over the big domino problem if people just acknowledge that it is a problem that must be addressed rather than an acceptable loss.
That's like the mic drop moment.
Michael drop moment. Yes, forgive me, the Michael drop moment. All right, brother. We have one question, so here we go. What do you think about designers and team builders taking positions as employee engagement officers to help HR? That's actually a very good question. I think that it would be I think it would be a great idea if a company was willing to pay them enough to make that position actually worth their while, where they didn't actually start checking boxes themselves because they didn't make enough. The incentives to fix the problem must be that a company is willing to invest in it. Just hiring someone, again, if you have HR doing the hiring and they bring in these designers, guess what they're going to do? They're not going to hire the right people. They might go the cheap route. They have to invest a lot of money in this. And I believe you can invest is unlimited amount of money in this. Like whatever your budget is, you can 10x it on salary. And by saving all of the disengagement, lack of productivity, and turnover, I'm confident that at the end of it, they'll still save millions after that investment. I can guarantee it. I can lay it all out. I've actually done it for companies the same way. Spend this is what you'll save. But the problem is cash up front is real. The savings are imaginary. And CFOs aren't good at the imaginary. They know debits and they know credits. They don't know what ifs. Imagine this. You have to show them, imagine this. This is the dream that we're missing. That's the reality that you have to have the whole ecosystem realize.
All right, man. How do people find you?
Usually annoying, but they have to get to know me.
No, that's your wife. But
People can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty available. My phone number, my email, like any way you can. I literally make it very easy to contact me. As you know, Shawn, I'm a big, huge proponent of giving, networking, having conversations with people. This is literally what I do. I don't believe in just monetizing relationships. I believe in making an impact, and I talk to people, a hell of a lot more people, for free than I do for money, because I really want to help people make better decisions and at least have a realization that this problem is one that has to be addressed on a wholesale level.
So awesome, man. Hang tight. Mr. Harper and I are going to close the show up, and we will come back and say bye to you, brother. So hold on. All right, Michael, it's our last closing of Experience Friday Live. The new rendition of something will happen here in June. So any parting words, Mr. Harper, for all of our listeners for 2.5 years?
I mean, thank you, and good luck, and keep the conversations alive, right? This is way too important to not be talking about all the time. So keep at it for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you, brother. Thank you for 2.5 years on this journey, and we will see each other on the other side.
Sounds good.
All right, bro.